Welcome back to Advertising is Dead. We with Ruhan. Ruhan, you and I spoke, I'd say about a week or ago, when
Yeah.
at which point I was like, I have to get you on the podcast, and
Yeah.
and that's how quickly this happened because I genuinely. So I've been interested in the entire learning space for a while, and I say learning space, and I don't say edutech because I feel there's so many different categories there that it's like trying to compare everybody's trying to do education and saying
Yeah.
putting them under one bucket, right?
Yeah.
Um, what I found interesting about what you guys are building is that you have a very, it's just the perspective that you take and how you're building it out.
Yeah.
I'd love to kind of start off with that. I'd start off with how did my captain happen, and we kind of go back to how um, climber happened, and we'll run through that part of it, and then we'll take it from there.
Of course. So very interestingly, I'm 26 years old, as you already know, and almost 12 years ago, I approached my dad and I told him, "Hey, I want to be a doctor. I want to be a writer, not a doctor. Everyone in my family is a doctor. There's a running joke in the family that if we had a dog, it'd be called Doctor because there are so many doctors in the family.
That sounds like
So
my family, by the way. My family is half doctor, half engineer. So I never realized what it meant to kind of go to a hospital when I was a kid because for every specialization, there was
exactly,
some relative who was doing
exactly.
that. Yeah. So I totally know
Exactly.
what you mean.
So yeah, the doctor and engineer is like janleva combination. Mine was just like one-sided, and the only person who's not a doctor in my family is my mom, who's an agriculture scientist. Now, scientist, doctor, these kind of people, and those people who were not able to become medical doctors became PhD doctors or veterinary doctors, which is even worse because now there was a lot of pressure on me. So I went to my dad. I told him, "Hey, I want to be a doc. I want to be a writer, not a doctor." And he's like, have you been watching too much of Three Idiots? You don't want to be the fourth idiot or something like that, and go prepare for your exams. The problem was I was scared of blood. Okay, and I still have this fear of blood. So he looked at me one day. He said, "Tumse na ho payega. Tum engineering hi kar lo. You should go for engineering, as is the
Yeah.
norm in South Asia." And I failed in my engineering entrance exams very badly because I
You
always
and I
wanted
have
to
a
be a
lot in
writer.
common in this point. I'm just going to like put that in there while you're speaking.
My my scores in the JEE, the AIEEE, we used to have AIEEE back in the day as well, at that point, and were really pathetically bad, so much so that my dad never talks about it anymore, although he was very, very up in front about all competitive exams because my brother used to ace them. My elder brother, he's a cancer specialist in the US. A lot of inferiority complex he's given me throughout his life. So that's how it happened. And my dad decided that, hey, I want to send you to Chennai to study in SRM University, Chennai. And you want to you would be studying electronics and communication engineering, a typical scenario where the parent makes the decision on behalf of the child. And I come from Kashmir. I was born in Srinagar, brought up partly in Saudi Arabia and Srinagar. So I'm not used to your South Indian tropical kind of hot kind of climate, humid kind of climate. And you can imagine a boy from the mountains, being picked and thrown into the arid plains of Chennai. In Chennai, I realized for the first time that you can even, in Chennai, it was for the first time that I realized that you can even sweat from your back. It was an alien concept to me. I'm not kidding. And but what happened very interestingly in Chennai is I met a lot of these other engineering students there, and even BBA students in SRM University, uh, which is one of the biggest, largest private universities for engineering in India. I cannot say it is the best, although they claim so. A lot of these colleges claim so, but it's one of the largest. So there were like 20,000 students in that college. That's a huge number of students. And I met every one of these students that I met said, "Hey, I wanted to be a photographer. I wanted to be a designer. I wanted to get into fashion. I wanted to do XYZ." And this is very common. I'm pretty sure you and anyone
Yeah, yeah.
who's listening to the podcast has gone through these people, and you'd be like, "So to kya? ऐसा तो
Yeah.
होता रहता है, बहुत सारे लोग ऐसे."
Correct.
But very interestingly, I was, when you're young, you think about things in a very different perspective. I was 17 years old when I joined college, and so was Zishan, my other co-founder and CEO, and so was Samir, my chief product officer and co-founder. And we were like, "Hey, this is very interesting, so many different types of people from so many corners of India and even outside India, coming from such diverse backgrounds are facing the same freaking problem, which is that they wanted to do something. There were two problems. Either number one, they didn't know what to do, so they were like, "Chalo, engineering kar lete hain." Your general or BBA kar lete hain.
I am that category. I have no idea what I want to do.
So those are easier to deal with, because then you can create a funnel and figure things out. And the second one is, they know what to do, or they know what they want to do. They don't know how to take the first step in that field, or they don't know someone who's taken the first step. I belong to category B. I wanted to be a writer, not a journalist, not that kind of a writer. I wanted to be an author, a very creative kind of a writer, or probably I would have ended up being a copywriter or something like that in an ad agency or something. But I didn't know anyone who had followed that particular line of a career. Everyone in my family was a doctor. Everyone that I knew in Kashmir was either taking up medical sciences or non-medical sciences, or was taking up commerce because they wanted to handle family business, or was taking up law if they were a little brave, or if they were even more courageous, they were taking up journalism, which was very dry to me. I didn't want to get into that. And that's how, this happened one night before an exam. There was a fluid dynamics exam the next day. And even a blank wall in front of you one night before an exam sounds more interesting, right? So we were just chatting, and we were like, hey, this is a problem, and what do we do to change this? And we decided, let's start off a magazine. Like every other college startup, let's start off a magazine wherein we'll interview people who are fashion designers right now. We will interview people who are photographers right now, or advertisers, or whatever, right? And we're going to sell this magazine to school students, where they'll be able to make an informed choice. It failed badly. We took a loan from our parents, 40,000 rupees or something like that. And by the first year, end of the first year of starting this venture, we were in a debt of 2 lakh rupees plus. We were like, holy shit, what are we going to do? And the magazine was called The Climber in the beginning. And then eventually it was called Inking Pages. It was a property of The Climber. Climber Knowledge and Careers Private Limited was the parent company. And then in fast forwarding to 2014 ending, is when Samir and Zishan were in a train journey, participating in a B plan competition, and we were about to pitch The Climber magazine, right? The magazine which was failing very badly. It was a student entrepreneurship program or something like that was going on by Tata First National Entrepreneurs Network, and we watched this movie called Dead Poets Society. I'm sure most of you who are listening today, and you as well, Varun, know of it, right? Yeah. So Dead Poets Society is a beautiful movie. And Professor John Keating in the movie, Robin Williams, he changed our entire perception of what the relationship of a teacher and a student should be, what real education is like. And it still gives me goosebumps. It's been almost 10 years since then, 9 years since then. It still gives me goosebumps. And and the entire storyline, and how "Oh Captain, My Captain" is a thing in it, right?
I kind of gathered that's where the name kind of comes from. Because when I see the name, I'm like, the reference is
Kipling.
Seems pretty straightforward, but yeah.
So that's where it came from, and we were like, hey, why not? So we were like, the problem here is that people or students like us or young people like us don't know where to start if they know what they want to do in life, or don't know what they want to do in the first place, primarily because they haven't met or they haven't learned from or heard from people who have already done it before. That's Udemy already existed that point of time, right? And Udemy had photography courses and whatnot, but there's that hand holding that a student or a learner requires, and that's a very great example that Samir and I were once discussing, and we came up with was, when you were a child, and Varun, you also have a daughter, this is very recent news for you, how does a child learn how to walk? You hold their hand and they walk, right? But when they grow up, how do they learn how to run? You don't hold their hand, right? They just need to have you just need to teach them how to walk in the beginning. After that, if they're up for it, they will run, right? So that was the example that we took for MyCaptain as well. We want everyone to be able to walk. We want to hold their hand and help them in whatever field they're interested in. And that's how MyCaptain started. 2015 Feb. We were still in college. I think we were in 4th year of college or something like that. And it was a property of Climber Knowledge and Careers Private Limited. That's the story.
You know, what I find interesting about this whole, I mean, you spoke of the walking analogy, right? I think that's actually a great way to represent this, because most times when you uh, start your career in trying to do something, a lot of the stuff you kind of get, and which is what I kind of also feel that when like even when I'm recording this podcast, sometimes I feel like I should give people information that will be useful for them when they start their careers off, not necessarily talking about the stuff that happens as you grow higher up the ranks, or you know, where you kind of move ahead in your career, because it's that
Exactly.
starting point where you're the most confused. You will continue to be confused. I mean, that is generally, if anybody says they're not confused through their career, then they're either lying, or actually they're just lying. I don't think there's a second option in there. But the confusion at the beginning is that, a, can I even do this? How do I even start? What's happening in this space? There's so many things there, and what I really liked about your model was this entire piece saying these are people who have very recently done a bunch of the stuff that you are planning to do, uh, and you're picking it up from there, which means that, a, it kind of feels a lot more accessible. You're not worried about maybe asking the wrong question, or you know, some of those things you have, right? When you join a new job, you worry about, okay, will I seem stupid if I ask this question? But
Yeah,
you don't feel stupid in asking that question if it's someone who's closer to your age. So
exactly.
and I want to kind of latch on to that point and kind of ask you where that kind of started building out.
Yeah, very interesting, Varun. I'm very glad that you know actually held that thought. So what happened was this actually came from college in itself. I'll give you an example. Okay, so I had friends who were studying computer science engineering, right? And I had friends who were studying BBA in the same college. And then one day, this guy tells me, and very interesting. Okay, we it happens to us every single day when we're in college, but we don't realize these things, these small nitty gritties. He said, my computer science engineering professor is supposed to be training me to build an app so I can get a job as an app developer in
Yeah.
a company, right? But my computer science professor has never built an app himself, and he never got a job in a company as an app developer, right? And this VBA guy says, hey, we have an elective called entrepreneurship, and my professor has never been an entrepreneur,
Yeah.
right? So this was, for a lack of a better word, it was fucked up for us. We were like, what's wrong? This is like something at the very core of things is wrong here, right?
Yeah.
This computer science professor who's teaching computer science has done a BTech and MTech and is a PhD candidate in the same college or university. वो सस्ते में मिल गया college को, you know,
Correct.
वो उसको
Correct.
50,000 रुपए दे रहे, they're giving him 50K or something like that instead of 80K that
Yeah.
he should be, a professor should be getting there, and that's why he's teaching. And we were like, now another problem that we understood was that there is no personalization, or there is no personal attention that the professor is able to have towards a student, primarily because of the huge age difference. And professor ऐसा नहीं होना चाहिए जो बोले, eventually teacher बोले कि हमारे जमाने में ऐसा होता था,
हाँ.
हम 10 किलोमीटर चलते थे. Very
Correct.
good, great story,
Yeah.
but what the hell do I have to do with it right now?
I agree 100%.
Right, tell me something that makes sense for me. So we were like, okay, we started off with this phrase called young achievers. You know, we'll get young achievers who at the age of 21, 22, 23, because hum us waqt khud bhi, we were 18, 19 years old, so we said young achievers 21, 22, 23 should come in and should probably teach, because they're going through it right now. So they'll be able to give, number one, more industry relevant information and knowledge.
Yeah.
Number two, they must have made certain mistakes on the onset of their journey, which they might help others avoid right now, right? And number three, it's so personal. I'm talking to you like a dude, right? You got to do this.
Yeah.
I'm going to use lingo that you really truly understand. We are dealing
Yeah.
with the Instagram generation right now, right?
Yeah.
How do we consume content? We look at stories and tap, 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 right?
Yeah.
So you got to be entertaining like that as well. So that's how we came up with the idea. And उस वक्त थोड़ा सा वो 25 under 25 campus under 25
Yeah.
under 25 ये सब type का under 25 was coming up a lot, so we said under the age of 25. Then we realized, hey, under the age of 25 is a little bit of a stretch. We'll keep it 30, 35 as well, but we'll keep it younger people, not like very old people.
Yeah. There's another point to that as well, right? Is that, so I forgot who I spoke to recently, and someone said this to me. So that then I'm in college right now, and my syllabus has been the same for the last 7-8 years. So in that sense of the word, what I'm learning today was relevant 8 years ago. But
Exactly.
like it's an example. Let me think about even like when I was in college. I was a terrible mechanical engineer, so I'm not even talking about engineering because I have no idea what's happening in that space. But it was as simple as like even like later when I studied media as well, and I went to a college which I honestly felt let us do a lot more things. I went to Symbiosis in Pune, and they would let us do a lot of things. Even there, this whole point you made about हम लोग चल के जाते थे, we would go to intern in places like MTV and Channel V. We'd be handed a camera and just go figure it out.
Yeah.
You went back to college and you had a guy turn around to you and say, कैमरा तुम्हारी माँ जैसी होती है, संभाल के रखना, जब unless it's absolutely necessary, don't pick it up.
Yeah.
Opposite, right? Because when
Yeah.
you go to the industry, you learn you see something very different. So
Yes.
in some way, has the focus also been to say it's not just bringing the learnings, but also bringing the mindset? Like today's industry or today's workplace requires certain mindset.
Yeah.
You can't come in with almost an ancient mindset. And not to say that people haven't adapted, but I feel that if you haven't worked for long enough, and I feel that in some way, professors need to intern as well from time to time. Maybe they'll get updated as well. But
Very
I feel
interesting idea.
was the mindset part as well a thought?
A huge part, yaar, Varun. The problem is ki, when as you said rightly, when you're not in the industry for the longest time, you not only lose see, knowledge will stay with you, but you don't really understand being on the ground, doing that stuff, doing what is necessary. For example, going back to the example of the building the app, right? So nowadays, how you build an app can be like, you can do a hackathon and build an app in like 4 days or 5 days, right? And that's
Yeah.
an environment that you build. There's a UX wireframe guy who will quickly do some user journey mapping and build the wireframe, and then there'll be a technology guy who build the back and forth, and you
Yeah.
quickly do it. It's an exciting process, and then you take real-time data and you look at it. These professors won't know about that. It's number one, knowledge; number two, mindset. Both of those things are lacking there. And yeah, 70% of it would be mindset. Huge role is played by the mindset in itself. Even in the world of advertising, how you come up with ideas, is not necessarily always very organized.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's ad hoc as well. There's not a जब किसी advertising guy को पूछते what's your process, they might not necessarily be able to answer that. They'll be like,
You
hey, it
can't.
depends.
It's
Yeah, exactly.
So some agencies claim to have a process, and I know people are given that guidebook, but I don't think everyone follows that. And you make an interesting point as well from the context that there are some areas where you can learn a system. Like for instance, if you want to be a programmer, there are things you can kind of learn. But if you want to work in, let's say, a creative space, not to say programmers aren't creative, they're creative in their own right. But the structure and systems are a lot more tuned to the kind of person you are.
Yeah.
So then maybe choosing the kind of captain, as you guys call it, becomes even more crucial. So who do you kind of pick to work with?
So when it comes to the captains, what we've understood also is that at the explore level, at the level that students are at right now, when it comes to college and schools, we've seen the audiences evolve as well. Probably I'll talk about that in some time. But they are so confused, and they are so beggars can't be choosers kind of a system. बोलते कोई भी दे दो.
Correct.
इंडस्ट्री से कोई भी दे दो, मुझे चलता है. I don't mind at all. You give me a photographer who's worked with Radhika Apte or has worked in that particular team, or you give me a photographer who has worked with the Swiggy team. Product photography versus fashion and film photography, completely different. Just give me someone so I can get industry knowledge. I want to understand ये होता कैसे है. I want to understand ये चलता कैसे. And I think that they have not reached the audience has not reached a point, intellectually, to even demand the luxury of being like, no, I only want to learn from. Very rarely will you find that happening. We recently launched our pro courses, our advanced courses in, longer courses in these particular fields. And that is where we are seeing this happen. A very niche audience who's ready to pay more is like, hey, I want to learn only from Bhavna Rajgopal, who has worked at the Minimalist before, and who has studied at ISB after that, and before that has also interned at Ogilvy. Very different kind of a trajectory versus a person like Ritesh Deshmukh, who has worked at, for example, a Flipkart, and has been the growth marketing manager at Flipkart, and before that has been a performance marketing manager at XYZ company. A very different career path, right? So very rarely do you find those kind of people who are like, mujhe ye wala stream चाहिए versus मुझे ये वाला stream चाहिए.
So I want to come to the professional ones, but I want to first ask you the first few years of when you started it off. What was that period like, and what were your learnings like? What did you kind of have to? What were your assumptions? Because you go in with assumptions, right? कि ये चल जाएगा, and most times you realize that you have to go in the opposite direction. So
Yeah.
if you look at the first few years, how did the product kind of evolve, and what were your learnings to kind of like bring it to this point?
So in 2015, when we went into debt, 2 lakh rupees, I'll start from there because,
Yeah.
वहीं से, when you're desperate, crazy things happen.
Yeah.
Like we are in debt and we understood that, hey, we want to do something called MyCaptain, जहाँ पे एक mentor और एक mentee का relationship बनेगा. This was the core idea, that people want to learn from people who are already doing it or who have already done it, right? So what we did was, we didn't have a product, we didn't have a tech team, we had nothing. We were in college. There was a college fest going on. So we said, हमको एक stall चाहिए जिसपे हम 3,000 रुपए खर्चा करेंगे, right?
Yeah.
और हम इस पे we'll put a MyCaptain hoarding or something like that on it, and we're going to pitch MyCaptain, and this will be our user test. क्या बिकता है कि नहीं? We started directly from sales. You know, usually what people do is they build a product and then they start nurturing people, give them free content. We had a mentor called Mr. Nagarajam Prakasham. He's on the board of advisors of Indian Angels Network and IIM Bangalore and whatnot. Brilliant guy, investor, serial investor. So he had told us sell from day one. He had given us one, and we were 18-year-old kids, dazzled 18-year-old, like, okay, we're going to sell from day one. So we started selling. And then on the first day itself, there were 190 units that were sold for entrepreneurship, creative writing, astronomy, and ethical hacking. Very interesting. One tech course, but majority, 150 sales came in for creative writing, entrepreneurship, and astronomy. And you know what? We didn't even have a product yet. And people were paying $1,000 each. That was your general college में जो workshops होते हैं ना, जो conduct होते हैं इधर उधर से, उस पे 1,000 रुपए का price. We said, we're going to test it out at that price in itself. Let's see if we can match it or not. And you know what we delivered? We delivered a WhatsApp group. Entrepreneurship के workshop के लिए, online entrepreneurship course के लिए, what we did was we created a WhatsApp group with a mentor and like 100 mentees or 50 mentees, however many there were. There were live chat sessions happening there, and there was content that was being shared there itself. And people and students gave us a 9.5 on 10 for those 190 sales that had happened for the first month. We were like, this works, right?
It's interesting, right? Because you mentioned WhatsApp and you mentioned sharing on that, and
this is 2015.
do you think it's also because it was so native to how people were using WhatsApp? It just becomes so much more convenient than going somewhere, logging in, trying something different?
People loved the idea at that point of time because they were like, oh my God, entrepreneurship on WhatsApp? I mean, this was alien to me, and now it's so accessible. And that too with an entrepreneur directly whom I can talk to on WhatsApp, or with a creator or a writer, who's published a novel at the age of 21 with Penguin, for example. Can I talk to them? That's crazy, right? Imagine a Ruhan who was 14, 15-year-old and his dad says, writer hai to paisa kaise kamaega, and me being like, hey, I'm talking to Megha Rao who has published a novel at the age of 19, and she tells me this is the process and this is what I'm supposed to do, and she's helping me hone my skills as well. That's crazy, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and all of our students were late school students or early college students at that point of time, and we ran it as a minimum viable product, an MVP. You're like, let's test it out, and it worked out beautifully. And that is what, so Samir, Zishan, and I have always been very lean in our startup methodology. We never go in with assumptions. We go in with a very basic thesis, and we throw it at the customer, and we only take an answer in a yes or a no. If it's a no, we forget about it. If it's a yes, then we build upon it. And that is exactly how we built the product so far. But very interestingly, when you asked me the question, you wanted to know how things have evolved. So 2015, 16, 17, we saw, while we were targeting tier 2, tier 3 cities as well, tier 1 cities as well, we primarily saw traction from tier 1 cities. Okay, your elite Delhi, elite Mumbai, Bangalore, Pune, a little bit of Kolkata. People don't like to pay a lot for these things because they're very artistic in nature already. They're like, ye to mera local wo sikha dega mujhe. And then you have your very rarely would you see Chennai as well. Chennai would be more interested towards tech or business or something like that back in 2015, 16, 17. After 17, there was a sudden shift, and we had also, so my captain had been doing a lot of events in tier 2 tier 3 cities, in a city like Nagpur, Bhopal, Indore, Vizag, all of these smaller cities. We'd been doing a lot of events, and we started the event culture there from 2015. And I'm not kidding, you can go to Nagpur and ask them, do you know about the climber, and they'll be like, yeah, kids, college and school students, because we were the ones who started 1,000 member, the 1,000 footfall events and whatnot around these fields, around the passion word, right? So we saw a change coming in, and suddenly 2017 onwards, we see that what is selling more is creative and business courses and not tech courses anymore. Tech is gone. And our thesis initially was this, because I wanted to be a writer, Samir wanted to be a tech blogger, Zishan wanted to be an astronomer. Very offbeat fields. We always
What a
wanted to cater
combination
to,
of
yeah.
three co-founders.
We always wanted, we always wanted MyCaptain to be about offbeat fields and not traditional, your web developer field or something like that, because that's very common. Sab log karte rehte hain aajkal, and there's already a lot of competition in the same. And we saw that evolution happening around 2018, in where we saw 52% of our customers in 2018-19 financial year coming from tier 2 tier 3 cities. And this is not like a Jaipur only that I'm talking about. This is as small as a Coimbatore or a Salem, or a Guntur. You
That's
understand what
interesting.
the kind of audience that I'm talking about is not your Navi Mumbai or your Srinagar or your other tier 2 Jaipur or Ahmedabad kind of tier 2 tier 3 only. Yeah, they are also part of the cohort, but I'm talking about small cities. And we saw that our top selling course had suddenly become psychology. This was crazy. Engineering students taking up psychology, where did this come from? So we did a little bit of research. We understood that the reason why creative and business courses have started flying is also because of the gig economy coming into play to some extent. And people have started to look at YouTubers or AIB, abhi the na wo log, or
Correct.
TVF and all of your entertainment platforms, and being like, okay, they're mainstream now. ये mainstream हो रहे हैं धीरे धीरे. And that was where the shift happened. Today we see 62% of our customers coming from tier 2 tier 3 city, and they are very, it's not as if they were till 2017-18. The other thing that we saw changing was the learning there was that people were taking it as leisure learning till 2017 ending, 18 beginning. They're like, हाँ थोड़ा सा है, कोई मसला नहीं है, ये entrepreneurship सीख रहे हैं, लेकिन करना तो engineering ही आगे.
Correct.
But after 2018, people started taking this very seriously. In fact, it became really hard for us to to delight the customer now, because the customer was like, मुझे अब internship कौन दिलाएगा? तुमने तो सिखा दिया. You're only a learning company then, or what? You will not help me get an internship or something. You will not help me get a job or something. Give me a project or something. My certification should have value so I can get a job or internship as a creative writer or a content writer or a blogger. And we started losing our minds, because we were like, okay, the market has started demanding more. And that's when we actually built the product. Till then, we were still running on WhatsApp, 2017 end tak ke. Thoda sa we had added a web app and all of these things. After that, we were like, okay, now we need to infuse tech. Because unless and until log usually start karte na app se, कि sir, हमारा एक startup idea, we have started an app, right? So my question always to them is why? And that kind of helped us focus on
So you
important
transitioned
things
an
as well.
existing almost like a customer base. So if I flip it, which is an interesting way to look at it, right? Ki you started off with a set of people saying, okay, let me focus on getting the customers in. Let me focus on selling from day one.
Yes.
Let me figure the most organic way to get people in. Let's use WhatsApp, something which they normally use, etc. Build the whole thing in. And over time, as you scale up and people know more about you, and you know that customer base has really scaled, then you start adding more product platforms. So you know that you're scaling up the offering. Does that also mean at some point you saw people kind of coming back and doing more courses? Have you seen that happen?
Yes, of course. So right now, almost 60%, 65% of our customers buy packages. कि मैं तो confused हूँ, मुझे सारे 33 courses आप दे दीजिए. I want to do 8 in an entire year, and I want to understand which one is for me. And similarly, I want to do all of the business courses or all the writing courses or all the creative courses, etc. You know how we got the idea? We got the idea from customers coming back again and again. भी ठीक है, मैंने अभी content writing and blogging किया था, अभी मुझे specifically novel लिखना सीखना है. how do I write a novel? Or abhi mere ko ab spoken word poetry I've gotten to know about. There's this spoken word poetry fest happening coming in or something like that, and I want to perform, so can you help us? So much so that we had to get our writing courses ratified by commune itself, because they were creating this market, right, in the sense that there was to some extent at least, and we were also advertising at the same time. So yeah, so that's how things evolved.
And over this period, how much has that, if you look at just how many customer, your customer base is, how that's evolved, and you've done all of this without funding, right? It's not like you've raised
Nothing.
any
We had
capital, none of those things.
nothing,
Entirely
zero.
bootstrapped till date.
Completely
And
bootstrapped.
if you look at the number of people you kind of, because also this space, because those are things you hear, right? You in the, again, I'm going to use edtech. In the edtech space, you hear a lot of stuff spoken about in terms of the number of, on one end it's the funding, but on the other end about how many people have kind of signed on, how many people have done courses, how many people have taken almost bundles in that sense of the word. So what have your numbers been like on that front?
So far in the past, so I will count it as 2017 beginning, when we actually went to MyCaptain completely. Tab tak we were still doing events and meandering around with other things, but 2017 se leke right now we have had 1 lakh plus paid customers, direct paid customers. Our revenues, I think we have crossed more than 20 crores in revenues. Last year we did something around 13 crores. Before that, things have been growing like that. Every year we look at 2x number of customers growing, and that is completely bootstrapped. The only amount of money that we had taken was the 40,000 rupees from Zishan's mom back in 2014 that we had to repay her. And those are the numbers. Engagement rate wise, we see some of the highest course completion rates. We see anywhere between 45 to 58% course completion, which is pretty high.
Yeah.
Your general Coursera Udemy sees something around 5 to 18%, and these are all paid courses as well. Then when it comes to net promoter scores, we see something around 60, which is industry leading in education. This was primarily because, very interestingly, when you talk about edtech, so aajkal people are talking about cohort based learning and live classes and whatnot. We used to do live classes in 2016-17. Even before Unacademy, we had started live classes at that point of time, and we had merged synchronous and asynchronous learning, and that gave us the best results, because we were outcome driven. We wanted most number of people to finish the course, and we wanted most number of people who finished the course to achieve their goal. That was the primary goal that we had in mind, and that is what we worked with. That's why we came up with the synchronous plus asynchronous hybrid learning methodology, which was brilliant. So that is how the numbers have looked at. 100,000 in the last financial year, we acquired close to 50,000 paid customers. This financial year, we are looking at acquiring another 70-80,000 at a higher price, because now the offering is also evolving and becoming deeper. So the pricing will also increase, and the market is ready to.
And when you look at those numbers, and I'm looking at how you kind of build that at some, and you obviously now bought in deeper courses, like you mentioned. You're bringing in professional courses in that sense, if that's the right term to use. And you're looking at it from the sense of saying, okay, fine. Till now you learned from captains or mentors who are like you. Now you're kind of adding in a professional element. So, and that's been more recent in that sense. And what kind of brought you guys to adding that into the mix? Is that something you saw people asking for?
Oh yes.
Or and how did that kind of evolve into?
So this came in from a business need. The business need was, how do you increase the lifetime value? So this was a question that I asked. How do you increase the lifetime value of the customer who's paying at an average something like $3,500 right now? How do you take it to something like 8K or 7K? Because the market was ready. It looks like the market is ready to pay more. So what we did was, we had these packages that we had released, right? So we tried to understand why people were taking up packages and why people were taking up a single course and not multiple courses. We figured out the answer was in customer personas. There were 3 customer personas we were dealing with. One was the explorer person who's like, मुझे एडवर्टाइजिंग भी सीखना है, मुझे डिजिटल मार्केटिंग भी सीखना है, मुझे इवेंट मैनेजमेंट भी सीखना है, and I also want to learn content writing. I want to learn these 7 different things and probably combine them later on. And this was the explorer. It came in from curiosity or confusion. The core reasons were either curiosity or confusion.
Both sides of the same coin, rather.
Exactly. And the second one was your pinpointed customer who's like, मुझे सिर्फ photography ही सीखना है, मुझे ना cinematography सीखना है. I don't want to learn script writing. I don't want to learn anything that is related to photography or the camera. I just only want to learn photography, and that's all. Or I only want to learn how to write a novel, not content writing, not how to start a blog, only how to write a novel. And the third one was your CV builder. These are typical people who from tier 2, tier 3 cities who come to a tier 1 college or something like that and are like, hey, mujhe CV, mujhe Google mein chahiye job. My
Correct.
first job should be in Google directly, right?
Yeah.
So customer persona wise, when I saw the Explorer has already taken 5-10 different courses, right? So the Explorer is not going to buy from me again in the next 1-2 years. The Explorer is gone, right? So let's keep him on the side. The second one was your pinpointed type and your CV builder. The pinpointed type was he was like, I don't want to take up a package at all with you. I only want an advanced photography course after this, or I only want, right? So again, lean methodology worked out for us. So we're like, okay, so the market is ready for an advanced course, and we did a price sensitivity test, and the market was like, hey, we will pay anything between 20,000 to 40,000 rupees if you give us a guarantee of an interview or something like that on top of it. We want a job. Our main primary reason for this is a job. It's not just learning. Learning ke liye I can do other non-serious learning as well. And that's how the evolution of what the pro courses are going to be like came into being. And that's how we proceeded.
And if we have to talk about the pro courses in terms of just how they function differently from what your traditional pro courses which you find in the market, what would that be?
So the best thing about our pro courses is, number one, we directly get them ratified with the industry. We do not believe in getting an IIT Madras or an IIM Bangalore. All respect to them, all due respect to them.
Yeah.
We do not believe in bringing in institutions to help us build the curriculum and the content, again because of the same reason. We still believe, no matter how advanced an institution you are, no matter how brilliant your emeritus professors and what all are, we still believe that if you're not working in the field right now, you should not be teaching. That is our philosophy. That is our thesis. You might want to disagree with us, good enough, not a problem, right?
Yeah.
That is why we bring in industry directly. For example, for our recently social media management pro course that we released, we brought in filter copy directly because there's no one better than filter copy or at par with filter copy when 100%. It comes to social media, right? So we'll be like, hey, help us build the social media management pro course. How do you build a social media manager? How do you build a content creator, freelance content creator, etc.? Similarly, we got on board Terribly Tiny Tales for advanced writing, how to get a job in writing in the first place, right? Content writing ho gaya, copywriting ho gaya, so many script writing ho gaya. And TTT has done a lot of things. They also have their Terribly Tiny Talkies. They have created a huge freaking community that has earned a lot from writing as well. So they were very good and they are already educators as well. Anuj takes workshops, Sanjana takes workshops. All of them are constantly teaching and educating. And so that's how, and even for our advertising and branding, we're bringing in someone from the industry in itself to ratify it, right? So it makes a lot of sense for the industry to ratify because eventually the industry is going to recruit. So if even if you don't get a recruitment offer directly from MyCaptain's side, you can at least have, okay, I have proof. My certification says that I have completed everything as per the ratification of filter copy, which means I'm ready for the industry. These people are not bringing up theoretical concepts from books. These people are bringing up practical things that filter copy uses on a day-to-day basis, right? To build a company, to build whatever they are. So that's one difference in approach. The other difference in approach is, if you take a traditional professional course in machine learning, data science, or even in advertising or something else, these are longer courses. These are 9-10 month long courses, 1 year, 2 year long. You have to pay ₹1 lakh or 1.5 lakh. What about the tier 2, tier 3 city aspirational kid? They won't
which
be
was
able
me.
to take.
I had no idea where to go.
Right?
I remember long back I came to Bombay, zero idea. Because I feel at that point in time from where and it's not like we didn't have like some sort of awareness, but we just didn't know about the media space. So I actually remember I'd walked into an institute which I think was run by Z at that point of time in Bombay. Because I didn't even know Xavier's existed. So I was that family of doctors and engineers. I can't blame my parents. Parents said, go figure it out, go find a place, we'll be okay with it. But I couldn't find anything. And I walked in, I'm like, this doesn't seem like it's legit. Right. It didn't feel legit. So I'm like, fair enough, let's go back. But I get what you mean. At some point, you don't know where to look and you don't know how to kind of start off as well.
Yeah, very interestingly, tier 2, tier 3 students, maybe even they might know of a course, an online course, an offline course, which costs 1.5 lakh rupees. They're like, oh God, this costs too much. And the time I have to spend, that means I have to spend
Hmm.
1.5, 2 years more. My parents are already saying that this is not a profession. On top
Correct.
of that, I'm going to tell them, hey, I'm going to spend 2 years and prove it to you that it's a profession. I'm going to spend 1.5 lakh rupees as well.
Yeah.
Oh my God, back off, right? The
Yeah.
only we've seen that these only tier 1 privileged class is able to take up these online courses, not your middle class, not your tier 2, tier 3 city crowd, not a person from Salem or Guntur or or a smaller town,
Hmm.
Bhubaneswar or something like that. So what we did was we made sure that our courses did not exceed 5 months.
Hmm.
They were 3 to 5 months long, not more than that, pro courses,
Hmm.
and they should not cost. So right now our costing is about 20,000, 20 to 25,000 EMI options available, very, very, very affordable. All the pro course enrollments that have happened so far since March 4th when we released them, 65% of them are from tier 2, tier 3 cities again.
Hmm.
The price sensitivity did not come into play because they were like, hey, saste mein hai. Sasta, not cheap, affordable.
Yeah.
Affordable is the
Yeah.
right
Yeah.
choice of words there. Number two, industry ratified hai. So it is from the industry. It's not like you guys are talking out of your ass or something like that. The
Correct.
industry is speaking in itself. Number three, there are job interviews that I'll get, and you'll provide me placement support for an entire year, which is
Hmm.
very nice, right? And number four, it's not time intensive. It's only like 3 to 4 months, 5 months at best.
Yeah.
What's stopping me from doing it?
You know, this thought process also brings me to something as I read very recently, right? And it's been something which I'm thinking about. It says that, and this is a conversation largely on everyone predicted that Ivy leagues in the US, for instance, would increase admissions
Yeah.
because of the pandemic. You'd see institutes here as well really expand because everyone's doing it remotely.
Yeah.
Everybody's, for lack of a better term, from nursery, which is what my daughter's in, to someone doing a university degree, is doing it in what is traditionally called distance learning. Right, you're doing it online, you're doing it whichever format.
Yeah.
So why would a larger institute not expand their admissions base, right? So some of these things are ridiculous. Like I know people who have like 98 percentile and not gotten into colleges and stuff like that. And I've always found that ridiculous. I'm like, how can you not? Like, I mean, what does that even mean, right? So, and the conversation slowly becomes like maybe the alternative actually isn't them expanding admissions. It's about saying, if I want to work in a Google and I can do a course that's ratified by Google, for instance, easier for me to get in. If I
Yeah.
want to work in the D2C space, if it's ratified by, let's say, Amazon, I'm just picking names here.
Yeah.
Does that make more sense in your CV or your LinkedIn profile compared to, like, I'll give an example. I've always been curious about an MBA. I never really wanted to do it. I was curious about it. So sometime last year, there's a professor called Scott Galloway who I speak about way too much. So Scott is someone I follow across all mediums. He launched his startup and he did a 2 week brand strategy course. Spent around the whole 40 grand mark of it. This guy's NYU Stern brand strategy professor, all that stuff. So I logged into it and I spent 2 weeks doing that. Most of it was recorded. I literally had 2 live classes. But it gave me enough fodder that even today I can still log back in, look at what that was in case I want to refer to it again. I got a small snippet of what I'm guessing his larger course would be. He's building. So this movement from saying, am I institute certified to being industry certified is a very different, interesting flow because would I hire someone because they went to, for like, let's say, a Xavier's in Bombay, or would I hire someone who's been trained under a Delhi Britannia Tales? For
Exactly.
me, the second one is more interesting right now. When I think from a pure hiring point of view, from like say a glitch or
Exactly.
any of that, because like, okay, 1 second, these guys know what they're doing.
Exactly.
And does that almost kind of show the future of every single kind? Like, I'm not even talking about passion education. I'm talking about across the board education. Doesn't that make more sense?
It, of course it does, yeah. Even when it comes to, so my captain says that we are best at non-tech careers, or we are going to be best at non-tech careers, right? But even when it comes to technology, yeah, I mean, would you hire from an IIT Madras, or would you rather hire from hire someone who has probably said that, hey, I've done my college, but during college I was interning at Ola, and we were trying to do this integration that we did. right?
Yeah,
You'd be like,
yeah.
yeah, it makes more sense because you've learned from the best who are working in the industry, or you've learned from someone who's working in the industry, and you understand the challenges around the same as well. I think this movement or this shift should come in. And the pandemic, and I'm not against, institutions or academia overall,
Never mind.
I'm
I
not.
agree.
So what I want is, I want a hybrid model coming in. We want your academic stuff, but we also want industry coming in at a very serious level inside colleges, inside institutions, and make sure that people are trained. The unemployability rate of engineers alone in India is
Crazy. I know.
crazy. I mean, 1 in 100 people is actually eligible to get into a
I
into a
was
job.
60,000 rank in Andhra engineering entrance exam, and I would have still gotten into a college, which kind of just like, and at that point, I'm like, yeah, I'm getting. I didn't take it eventually, but it shows you, right? And there's so many seats that lie empty because there is so many people just coming out. What are they all doing?
And it's not only about the unemployability. The problem is the demand for, I'll give you an example. The demand for jobs in sales alone is way more than demand for job in tech overall.
Correct.
Then why do we have more people going into engineering than marketing and sales bit of it, right? It's very crazy. And this would not have happened. This would not have happened if these recruiters, if these big companies that are supposed to be recruiting from engineering colleges had kind of shook hands with the colleges in itself and be like, hey, let us help you build the curricula. And then
Yeah,
eventually we only have to recruit.
I agree.
Let us design your labs. You
Yeah.
don't yourself design your labs. जिसमें बकवास कुछ भी होता है. There's no focus on practicality. 10-year-old, 20-year-old lab modules are still working out. Let us help you design new labs, and then we will recruit more people from you or something like that. So that is what I envision in the future. That's what should be happening. Right now it's happening in some colleges, in some universities, but it's not happening with a very serious intent to it. वो ऐसे काम करने के लिए काम हो रहा है कि हाँ बस करो, just do it and show it कि हम ये कर रहे हैं,
Correct.
अखबार पे छाप लो, पोस्टर निकाल लो.
Correct.
That's all. It's not happening very sincerely.
And actually, on this note, I also want to ask you a question because that's always been a point of confusion, right? Is that when I look at a lot of these course modules globally, I've seen predominantly recorded and some parts of it live. And whatever I've seen of the Indian consumer, it's a lot more live and very less recorded. Is that what you guys have seen as well? Because that's also been it's interesting to see how people are learning as much as what they're learning, right? Obviously, there are multiple aspects, but this one thing is very intriguing for me.
So I'll divide the answer into two parts. One is edtech in itself. The other one is traditional learning. Till 2017 ending, when our sales guys used to pitch MyCaptain, a lot of these people would not buy because they'd be like, offline nahi hai kya kuch? Don't you have something offline? Is it only purely online? Although it was live classes, and live classes was not present anywhere except Unacademy started bringing
Yeah,
live only when they released in 2018-19, when they released Unacademy Plus.
correct.
Till then, they did not have anything live. Vedantu was live, but that's in the K-12 segment. Byju's didn't have anything live. None of your big edtech companies in India had anything live. Live classes ka shosha only last year has come in, right? After the pandemic started. So people were more like, in tier 2, tier 3 cities as well, even tier 1 cities, people were more like, I want something offline. I want something hardcore. Online learning is not great, right? That is the kind of perception they had.
Yeah.
With time, when deeper market penetration happened, and Byju's has played a huge role in terms of traditionalizing online learning and everything. Their second question was, do we have live classes, or is it only recorded content, right? And that is when we learned and understood we are doing something really, really correct, because everyone in our segment, you take your Coursera, you take your Udemy, you take your masterclass. Recently, you have these other players like Front Row and Unlu classes and whatnot coming out. All of them, none of them are live, right? And that is going to stab them in the back. Cohort-based learning is the future. In fact, it's the present. If you're not on a cohort-based learning system, then you're missing out on a lot of things. So outside India, people like to utilize their time at their own will. So they're like self-paced courses, right? So self-paced is basically your recorded content.
Yeah, like I subscribed to
In
Masterclass, right? And I have all access primarily because, and I got it free for a year and they latched me on because I'd bought 2 courses and they gave me the 1 year for free
uh,
when they launched it. And I haven't unsubscribed yet, but I agree with you. I don't want to do the workshops. I don't want to do live classes. I almost use it like YouTube. I go to each course, I run through the videos I want to, and I go past. It is what I do. But
exactly.
I get what you mean.
But the thing there is, Varun, you are not a serious learner. You are actually a leisure learner there,
Yeah,
right?
that's true.
Serious
That's true.
learning mein, they want live classes because they want hand holding. They're like, varna kya hoga? Varna main seekhunga nahi, main paisa de raha hu, I'm giving money. And you have the luxury to buy a 15K course and be like, हाँ छोड़ो bala maro, nahi karna is वक्त. But your average learner is not.
Yeah.
You're the creme de la creme. Your average learner is not the creme de la creme. If they spend 10K, they'll be, oh my God, I've spent 10K. I want to, I want to squeeze the hell out of it. And the Indian consumer is very greedy when it comes to what they
Yeah.
want.
But then doesn't that also mean that, okay, and maybe it's a perspective difference, right? For me, it's like I have access to this for as long as I want. So I can go back to, like, there are courses on Masterclass, for instance, which I've gone back to twice, thrice, because I feel like every time I go back to some of those modules, I learn something new. So I go back. Live, you can't necessarily go back all the time. So that's also
What
been
we
one.
did was, that's the hack that we did. We have synchronous plus asynchronous, right? So if you are a learner who wants to learn at their own pace, you also get the recordings of the live classes that have happened. For
So
example,
best
you
of both worlds.
exactly, and we see almost 70% of our users coming back to the app and revising everything that was there before. And you just need to give them access. You just need to have access there. Jisko marzi वो live class attend करे, जिसको मर्जी वो ना attend करे. That's completely fine. That's up to them. But they want the option of having the live because that kind of gives them the satisfaction कि these people are serious teachers. This is serious business. This is not like हाँ ऐसे ही कुछ भी किया और पैसा दे दिया और खत्म. That's not what they want.
Have you also noticed the fact that things like soft skills and communication, etc., are getting more and more? I mean, especially if you're going technical, you might have someone who's doing a technical job, technical course, but coming here saying, "I want to really learn this because I know this is needed." Like, I need to know how to do written communication. I need to do how, I just communicate generally because I remember this interesting story where a friend of mine, by virtue of the family he was a part of, ended up getting onto the board of an engineering college in, I think in Orissa it was. And he went there and realized that they were graduating hundreds and hundreds of people every year. None of them were being taught communication skills. He's like, ye log nikal rahe hain. They know the technical stuff. They don't know how to communicate. So tomorrow they want to do, like you said, a sales job or a marketing job, because most engineers end up, I feel, doing MBA in marketing or sales. And not necessarily going deep into the engineering part of it. And that's literally what he added. And this is a guy who had barely finished college, right? And he just happened to, because he was part of the whole family thing. But, and I still remember that story because I keep thinking about that, is that I was never taught communication when I was in engineering. Or was I spoken to about how I should draft an email? Or, there are so many of those, because that's what a large part of everybody's work life is. A large part of your work life is all those things. It could be, like, how do you format a presentation? Is for me more a day-to-day process for an engineer than writing like 100 pages of code.
So very interestingly, Varun, and this will surprise you as well. Very interesting thought. Okay, this is a problem. I know this is a problem. Is there an Indian ed tech, for example, that is working on this very important problem? I don't think so. But are there Indian ed techs that are working on communication of toddlers and children? Yes, there are. There are companies coming out, and I can't name them, who are trying to teach coding in a visual manner, for example, right? And they're trying to teach verbal communication and written communication to kids. Why? Because their parents have realized how important these things are, and they can sell to the parents.
Correct.
So almost all Indian ed techs have been very sales oriented, going towards the money rather than going towards the problem. And I believe if we actually as a community of Indian ed tech entrepreneurs or, educators as well, shifted more towards the problem in itself, sales would follow. Subscriptions would happen, and we are going to experiment with, written communication. And we have this new course that we've started. It's called Getting Job Ready. for business separately, and getting job ready for technology separately. And these are aspects that we cover in it. Resume, bhai, resume kaise banate hain, right? How do you actually introduce yourself, in an interview? How do you write a mail? What is professional behavior? What is professional relationship? How to take feedback, how to give feedback, etc. And it has started selling already, right? So I believe these are things that need to be focused on. And बच्चों को सिखाने की जगह आप core problem जहाँ पे है, nip the evil in the bud is true, nip the evil in the bud is true, but by the time these kids will reach a professional level, it's going to be 20 years. तब तक कि you don't know what might have changed, right?
I agree.
So we need to focus on what the problem is in the market, that they're suffering the problem right now, suffering from the problem right now, not the market that will suffer from the problem 20 years from now. That doesn't make any sense.
So what are you seeing as, obviously for you guys as well, as you look ahead? I mean, there's the professional ones you just launched, but what are you kind of seeing in the pipeline of what you're kind of building out, and what do you kind of see as trends in this entire space that are emerging, which you think is really going to push towards the future?
Number one is the gig economy. So everyone is talking about. So recently, I was talking to some people from Pepper Content, right? Very exciting content company that has just come up, and
they're fabulous.
Fabulous, right? Very interesting kids, and just passed out from college. So they have this tagline that they constantly use. They say that every company is going to be a content company, right? Which is very, very, very true. I resonate with that, and I feel that it has already started. Okay, and not only the gig economy, but also this entire focus around content and media and whatnot has already started. And students, the learners, have started looking at these things. They're like, oh God, isme bhi ban sakta, usme bhi ban sakta, I want to do this. And they're already on those platforms consuming that kind of content, right? They're like, I also want to be part of building this kind of content. So that, number one. Number two, very interestingly, every year, the number of people, the growth in terms of number of people applying for IIT JEE exams is dropping. It is dropping. It's finally dropping, right? And
can I tell you a fact which I don't think I've ever said on the podcast? The year where I was supposed to give the IIT JEE, it was the year 2000.
Okay.
And they had scheduled I think there was a pre-exam. They had 2 exams at that point. I have no idea, if I don't remember clearly. 2nd of Jan.
Okay.
Who puts an engineering entrance exam for IIT on the 2nd of Jan of 2000? Like, it was the second day of the millennium. I'm like, that is the problem with the education system. Like, I'll never forget that. And I remember the date came out, and I was like, what? And I had friends who were actually sitting. I didn't study. I actually didn't even give the exam. Because I'm refusing to give it. I told my parents years later that I never actually gave it. They thought I just hadn't gotten through, but I never actually gave it. Because I'm like, what is like... Anyway, sorry. A little... I had to kind of put that in there.
They're very interesting thought, but yeah, I think it's biting it in their, it's biting them in their ass now, right now, because what's happening also is they can, all of your quota factories and all of these series are also coming out, and all of your 3 Idiots started this kind of a thought process amongst people in India. When these things start reflecting in your cinema, very interestingly, on a side track, when these things start reflecting in your cinema, like Manto had said, कि अगर आपको मेरी, अगर आपको मेरी तहरीर गंदी लगती है, तो इसका मतलब है माशरा ही गंदा है. If you don't like my writing, if you don't like my prose, that means that the society, because my prose at the end of the day is a reflection of the society, right? So when these conversations start happening in the media or in entertainment sector, and so that means that there is a rebellion that is building inside. And we have always said that a revolution is brewing. At MyCaptain, we are constantly saying that a revolution is brewing. This is going to break. People are going to come out. And very interesting, I don't want to take a jab at all these test prep companies that are out there, not naming the biggest, billion-dollar companies that are out there. My problem is, if they're promising IIT JEE seats, and if they're promising UPSC seats or whatever seats in test prep, 5-10 years down the line, people who have gone through their programs are going to look at them just like people right now look at quota or or your Akash or your Bansal classes or your Fitji classes, and there are so many memes around the same. In fact, MyCaptain was about to put up a billboard outside Akash Institute in Fitji back in 2018-19. We were very angry at that point of time. The billboard wanted to read something like, Akash wanted to be a photographer, but his father said, "You aren't Fitji." Right, something like that. And we wanted to make fun and take jabs at these people, because we belong to that generation who studied in an Akash or a Fitji or something like that, right? And while the net promoter score would be very high for them, I mean, I don't think it would be very high. The detractors and the toxicity, the caustic toxicity that the detractors would have would be extremely in depth as well. It would stay for life. आप मिलिए ना किसी से जो कोटा में पढ़ा है, तारीफ किया है कभी क्या कोटा की? I don't think so. Only those who actually got into IIT must have probably.
वो कुछ बोलेंगे नहीं ना, मतलब अगर they kind of have that like at the back of their नहीं फिर भी आ तो गया IIT.
हाँ, exactly. So this is a factor that is playing in a lot of that is playing a huge role. People are already going away from this IIT, JEE, AI, EEE kind of a scene. They're seeing alternate careers emerge. They're seeing their cousins, their elders getting into alternate careers, and this gig economy is also building up. Every company is moving towards content. So I see a huge shift towards business and creatives more than technology overall. And even when it comes to parents, 40s, people who are in their 40s, उनको हकीकत पता है कि अभी मेरा बच्चा 18 साल का होने वाला है, 17 साल का होने वाला है. उनको पता है कि इंजीनियरिंग पुरानी खबर है, वो .com बूम की खबर है, 2000-2002 की खबर है. तब अगर मैं इंजीनियरिंग में भेजता, इट वुड हैव मेड मोर सेंस. अब नहीं मेक सेंस करता है, राइट? नाउ प्रेशराइजिंग देम इज नॉट. नाउ देयर आर सो मेनी डिफरेंट फील्ड्स एज वेल. सो आई थिंक देयर इज अ सोसाइटल माइंडसेट शिफ्ट that is already happening, and that is the biggest strength that this particular space will have.
As I come towards the end of every episode, I ask my guests a set of questions, and if you listen to it like I know you have, then you will know some of those questions. I still find the answers are always more interesting. Apart from all of this, what is something that you spend a lot of time doing? Obviously, you do spend a lot of time with MyCaptain and what you guys do there, but what do you personally spend a lot of time consuming, doing, just obsessing over? What would that be?
So I am a huge language buff. I love learning new languages. When I was in Kashmir, I learned Urdu, Farsi, Arabic, Kashmiri, and I'm primarily into poetry. So I write a lot of poetry as well in English and Urdu, and Hindustani as well separately. So I've been compiling lately. I've been compiling all of my poetry, and probably I'll try to approach a publisher or something like that and get it published if possible. People don't read a lot of poetry these days, but Akhil Katyal, for example, I'm a huge fan of his poetry, and I was reading his poetry recently, and I found that there's a huge fan following that he has around his genre of poetry. So that's something that I'm really interested in, getting something out that is English, Urdu, and Hindustani all together from a Kashmiri's point of view, living in mainland India with those kind of poems will be very, very interesting. So that's one. The other thing that I really, really enjoy doing is, again, it falls under MyCaptain, but not MyCaptain specifically under that umbrella. I really like doing these kind of sessions one-on-one or one-on-many with students who are trying to figure out things in career-wise, not teaching them specific skills, but career-wise, kya karna chahiye, kya nahi karna chahiye. Number 3, Sameer and I jam a lot. We sing a lot, and I really, really like. We're working on some songs right now. I really, really like doing that with him. So writing, reading, singing, a little bit of. I've also started growing interested in theology and theosophy lately, and trying to delve into that a little bit. So that's how my general day looks. Might be delving into creating content real soon for social media, for YouTube, for Instagram, etc. Probably get into podcasting soon as well, but let's see how much time I get for that.
There aren't enough podcasters in the world. There are a lot, but I would still say they're not enough. That's how I always put it. What can you put together in an instant?
A poem.
Anything you've read, watched, or listened to recently which you would recommend?
I think I just watched Nomadland on Hotstar just yesterday or yesterday night, and I really liked
Yeah.
the overall cinematography, the acting, the entire concept of being homeless or being on the road and Into the Wild was something that I really liked before.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
think Nomadland has a very different kind of a take on that, and that's something that I would really recommend. Another one, I read this novel by this first time Indian novelist called uh, Avni Doshi. It's called Girl in White Cotton. It's also called Burnt Sugar in some parts of the world. Very brilliant. It was shortlisted for a Booker Award last year. Very brilliantly done, and that's something that I would really recommend.
Um, you know, my last question generally has been, why will Dash not die? And I'm kind of trying to change that. And this is actually the first episode where I'm actually changing it.
Oh God.
Why will um, so if you have to say, you call my captain as passion learning, right? Why will learning around passion not actually not die? I will not change the question. I think that
Okay.
that sounds very nice. I don't want to change. My where I was moving towards was to say that learning around passion is dash, right? But I think I will leave that for another episode. As you can see, these things evolve. But I'm going to let you. I'm going to ask you why it will not die.
So I think it won't die because it comes. The answer lies in the vision of what My Captain stands for. My Captain says that we want to enable every human to be able to pursue a career they truly love. Okay, so now here the keywords are human and love, right? So these are human emotions at the end of the day. This is about aspiration. Aspiration will never die, Varun, right? I really that's why I think that if aspiration never drives, and that's the prime dies, and that's the primary driver towards learning something that you're really passionate about or doing something that you're really passionate about, I don't think learning will die as well.
Thanks, Atan, for doing this. Has been fabulous. I think this has been one of the most interesting conversations around learning that I've had on this podcast. And thanks, Atan, for coming on Advertising is Dead.
Thank you so much, Varun. It was a breath of fresh air talking to you.
Thanks.